Well, you see, Brazil is no longer an interesting business partner. It is a strategic partner. I understood clearly that the secret of a good businessman is first to be honest. Okay. Second, you have to exceed the expectations of your customers and your suppliers.
Hello and welcome to Brazil is Not for Beginners. Today my guest is Guilherme Hannud. Guilherme has a long career in international business and trade. He's represented over 60 Brazilian businesses in over a dozen countries. He's helped dozens of companies set up their operations in Brazil. I don't quite know what to call him or how to introduce him, but I'm overjoyed to have him here speaking with us and sharing lessons from his career. Thanks so much for joining us.
Most welcome, and I'm very pleased to be able to share with you guys some 55 years worth of international business experience in, as you said, in promoting our country overseas in a very glorious moment of our history.
Okay.
Which started in the early 70s and went up to late 80s. During those almost 20 years, we had a wonderful opportunity to exercise our own creativity, to exercise our willingness and our capabilities to make things happen.
Amazing. So taking a step back on your career, how did you come to this realization? What made you see this? Where did you first start your professional career that you saw this opportunity to help Brazil export to abroad?
Because before that time, Brazil was primarily an agricultural and mining-based economy.
Okay.
We were, so to speak, trading coffee to plastic toys.
Yeah.
And that was not a very fair trade, considering the fact that we had so many human resources willing to develop their own businesses, willing to have an opportunity to create a local industry.
Yeah.
And thanks to the infrastructure that the government provided us during the late 50s and 60s, we were then able to start manufacturing.
They built more roads. There was more of an industrialization push, right?
Yeah.
Or an infrastructure push.
Before you can set up an industry, you need energy.
Yeah.
Without energy, can do nothing. So hydroelectric power plants all over. To manufacture, you need iron.
Yeah.
Steel mills, they also need electricity. Once you are into the industrialization process, you need manufacturing machines, you need lathes, you need presses. So we ended up having our own machinery, production machinery industry. And then we need communication.
Yeah.
To transfer what we produce, to transfer raw materials, and to communicate over phone.
Yeah.
In those days we had no internet, we had no...
It was a different time.
Different time. So the basic infrastructure for Brazil to become an industrialized country began in the late 50s and was far more revolutionized during the 60s and early 70s.
Okay.
Well, I started actually working when I was 12 years old.
Okay.
First thing I did at 12 years old was to wash cars.
Okay.
Sorry, to take care of cars.
Okay.
But then I learned that the best thing you can do is to provide a nice surprise.
Okay.
People love surprises. We all love surprises.
We do.
So I was hoping for some little money to take care of a car. Mm-hmm. But then when the car owner would come back for his car, it was beautifully washed.
Okay.
I was not expecting anything. I did that for my own pleasure,
Okay.
for my own sense of accomplishment.
Okay.
But and eventually I would get some additional money as well.
Starting as car washing.
I understood clearly that the secret of a good businessman is first to be honest.
Okay.
Okay. Second, you have to exceed the expectations of your customers and your suppliers. But talking about foreign trade, about trade in general, about human relations in general, you see, foreign trade specifically is more delicate than local trade, far more delicate.
Yeah.
Because you have distance, physical distance, cultural distance, language distance.
Yeah.
You have different habits, different values, and bringing different civilizations together is absolutely fantastic. And what is it that you have to do when you entertain business with people who don't speak your language? You have to learn their language, or they have to somehow try to understand. And business essentially is a great opportunity to entertain such relationships and to exceed your own expectations, your customers' own expectations, if they are initially only focused on a trade, a specific trade.
You know, how did you first realize that this framework you had would be valuable in international trade? And you mentioned kind of being in West Africa, right? So how did you end up in West Africa selling products for Brazilian companies?
Before going to West Africa, I had to make some money.
Okay. You said you were self-financed, right? There's pre-venture capital, right? So
I had to make some money. So, and Africa happened by destiny.
Okay.
I first started making some money, taking care of cars, washing cars, and then I loved nature, loved birds, and I decided to raise birds.
Okay.
But I could never sell them because I was so much touched by, the little egg becoming a little chick and then bird. And I said, I cannot sell. I'm emotionally attached to. But it came to a point that I was living in an apartment very near here.
Okay.
And I had 27 cages with birds.
How did your landlord feel about that? I'm sure they weren't too happy. Maybe they didn't know.
Early in the morning before going to school, I had to take care to clean them, feed them, and But that was wonderful. But then I said, well, I must sell some. So I started also making money by taking care of birds, curing birds for other people, and then one day I ended up in a Norwegian colony in North Dakota.
Okay.
As an exchange student.
Okay.
In 1971.
Okay.
And in my application, I said, well, I would like to live where nature is. I like to live in a farm.
Okay.
And that was January.
Good luck. Yeah.
I got to North Dakota in January, beginning of January, at nighttime. I had no idea where I was. But then next morning, when I opened the curtains, all I could see was white snow everywhere.
Yeah.
And my first thought was, where is it that Santa Claus is coming from?
Yeah.
And then I enjoyed 6 months of an extraordinarily different culture of Norwegian immigrants, and a totally different world that I was used to. In Brazil, you only had the Catholic religion. And in this little town called Powers Lake in North Dakota, the rural community and the urban community totaled 633 inhabitants only. coming from São Paulo with 5 million or 6 million.
At the time, yeah.
At the time. And I was the 634.
Okay.
And then as I went to school, I said, it is unimaginable. I can learn things that are totally unusual to the Brazilian curriculum.
Yep.
I could learn music. I could learn playing any kind of instrument. I could learn theater. I could learn, future farmers of America, how to take care of farms, future homemakers of America. I could learn sports.
Yeah.
I said, well, I could learn psychology. Psychology, I have in Brazil is mathematics, Portuguese, and you have to study that. But you never develop. You're never given the chance to listen to what your heart actually guides you to in terms of being a happy person in a certain profession, because you have no chance in Brazil to experience any profession. So I decided to work for Brazilian schools, doing all sorts of extracurricular activities.
Oh, interesting.
Every aspect of a profession, I was trying to bring to our schools. Mm-hmm. Okay, like I have experienced in the States. And then all of a sudden I was making money by, teaching, the Students Association how to have its own newspaper, how to have a radio, how to promote sports activities, contests, how to, create different courses, extracurricular courses, like martial arts, music, everything that I learned in the States. Mm-hmm. And then all of a sudden I had hundreds of students willing to do extracurricular activities and trips.
Yeah.
So every weekend we had camping activities. During vacation time, we had cultural trips. After graduation trips. Mm-hmm. And then I was working like 20 hours a day, sleeping 4, maximum 5.
Yeah.
But very happy, making people happy and making some money. And then in the course of this business, of this activity, I happened to meet the first African mission that came to Brazil, 1972.
Okay.
The first Africans, they woke up for the fact that Brazil could be a potential business partner.
Yeah.
And they ended up in the most important Brazilian industry in those days. That was the cartão de visita, was the big thing about the Brazilian industry, Volkswagen of Brazil.
Okay.
In the 60s and 70s, that was the most honorable industrial activity that we had in this country was Volkswagen.
Automotive, okay.
And then they came to visit Volkswagen and they met this gentleman who was lucky enough not to become my father-in-law.
Okay.
I was dating his daughter.
Okay.
But then he invited those Africans for dinner. And I was there by chance, by coincidence, by surprise, by destiny.
Okay.
And they gave me a list of 100 products that they needed for their own basic requirements. And I said, it is not possible. Are you willing me to take you to a supermarket or to a grocery store or to a building material store so you can buy something? No, I actually need mineral water. I actually need cement. I need nails. He says, no, but why do you need these things if you can manufacture or have them with your own local resources? I was not thinking of making money. I was thinking I got into their hearts, and they would spend the money that they did not have to buy what they did not need from overseas. I says, well, listen, let's calm down for a moment. Brazil is today in a position to be an international supplier because we have been given the opportunity to create our own industry. And this is what is making our country grow. This is what is creating jobs. This is what is progress besides agriculture and extractive activities. So why don't we create industries in Africa instead of you just buying products and paying for what you could produce?
Yeah.
And then they says, well, you know what? Nobody ever thought in this way, because it was far more convenient for our colonizers to ship us whatever they had ready. Well, it's a way to keep people depending on
Of course.
you.
Yeah.
So, what is the most important gift that a human being can have in life? It's called freedom.
Yeah.
Freedom and love.
Mm-hmm.
So, if you offer somebody freedom, they will understand that your relationship with them is not based on interest, is not based on greed or vanity or anything. It is based on looking at you as a human being. And then you have solidarity. And then you have loyalty. And then if you don't sell a product, you have sold happiness. And that person is going to say, okay, you're not going to sell me that product, but would you mind helping me set up an industry to make that product in my country?
Okay.
And as a consequence, you are probably going to make much more money in business.
Yeah.
Because you are not satisfying your interest.
You're
You
satisfying
are
theirs.
getting into somebody else's heart, understanding what his suffering is all about, and providing a solution for a need, and not continuing to keep that relationship based on dependency. It's based on freedom.
You said in West Africa, but
West Africa.
it was a mixed bag of people.
Senegal,
Okay.
Gambia, Sierra Leone, Liberia,
Okay, so
Ivory
a broad
Coast,
group, yeah.
Ghana, Togo, Benin, Nigeria, and Zaire.
Okay. Wow.
So that
So quite
was
a group.
2.5 months traveling to Africa, country after country, and then going back again, and maybe a third time before I would come back to Brazil, like 70 or 80 days away from home, and no communication in those days.
No, there was no internet back then to do that, and telephones were
8 hours
extremely
waiting
expensive.
for a phone call.
Yeah.
You had to wait 8 hours to get a phone call those days.
And what exactly were you doing? Were you working with Brazilian companies that were serving the construction of these initial industries in these countries? Were you helping them think about what to build? Yeah, I'm assuming you didn't know how to do these. You'd never built a concrete factory before, right? So, what was the role you were playing? What were you doing while you were in Africa on these missions?
Well, the first step is to establish a trustworthy relationship.
Okay.
So I would bring the Africans to visit all the industries that I had in my business portfolio.
Okay.
Building materials, foodstuffs, paper and pulp, shoes, you imagine.
How did you make these connections here in Brazil? This was just from being...
I got that list of 100 items.
Okay.
And I started, this one, let me list companies that I know, companies that I've heard of. Let me do some little research.
I'll reach out to them.
And reach
I'll
out
get
to
to
them
know this company.
and tell them, look, I want to represent you overseas.
Okay.
And then it says, where? In West Africa. It says, West Africa.
Please.
Please.
Yeah.
Because
I don't want to do it. Okay.
it was difficult.
Yeah.
No transportation. There was no vessels going to Africa, no communication. And to begin with, I was in the middle of an important prejudice. Africans had a prejudice against Brazilian businessmen.
Yeah.
Because we were not experienced and we were not as honest as we should be.
Okay.
For example, I'm going to ship products overseas. So I either understand that as an enormous privilege as an opportunity or as an opportunism.
Yeah.
There's a big difference. I had to go to Santos Port several times to inspect shipments.
Make sure that there was the right number of products, that it was packaged correctly. Yeah.
And more importantly, that was the product that I sold and not stones to make up for weight.
Okay.
And not skating boots. And I'm talking of true examples.
Yeah.
Finding totally incorrect products because some of our Brazilian companies, they were opportunists. And
How did you work with them to understand that it was a real opportunity that they should be treating honestly?
First thing is not asking for anything.
Okay.
It's everything on my own risk and account. You don't have to spend a single dollar for any of my expenses.
Okay.
But I require one thing, loyalty.
Yeah.
Because I'm going to be employing my own financial resources, my lifetime in a market that you have absolutely no presence or knowledge. So I require loyalty, and that's all. And in those days, back in the 60s and 70s, this word loyalty, it had far more meaning than it has today.
Okay.
So I did count on exclusive rights for distribution or for setting up factories overseas based on 60 large Brazilian companies. Not only large ones. I would employ the same effort in promoting a small business, family business, than I would do to promote a large Brazilian corporation, because I was not willing to make of that anything else but an instrument, a way that I could express consideration. I can clearly remember today, there was a family business here in São Paulo. They were making machineries for bakeries, mixing machines, ovens and stuff. And they were in so much need of expanding their business because Brazilian market was always like this, a roller coaster. They came to me and says, do you think you can set up bakeries and make, the Africans start their own businesses based on our machinery? Based on our equipment. And I can clearly remember that I had so much enthusiasm to help that family.
Yeah.
To sell $10,000 while I was selling $1 million for the largest fish processing plant in the world that in those days used to belong to Quaker Oats.
Okay.
So my family would criticize me. Says, what? Why are you devoting so much of your efforts to that small business while you can make so much more money doing something else? He says, because I'm not here for the money.
Yeah.
I'm here for the purpose of making a difference.
Yeah.
That's what I want to do in this world, make a difference and not be the difference.
Yeah.
And I was so pleased to help those small companies keep their businesses alive.
Yeah.
And I was so pleased to go to Africa and make a difference.
How big did this operation get, kind of at its peak? How many countries were you in Africa? How many Brazilian companies were you representing?
Yeah. 60 companies.
60, okay.
60 in 8 countries.
Okay.
And when I was not in Africa, I had always my African friends coming to visit me here and taking them to check, the
factory visits,
factories
things like
and
that.
Stuff. And I can clearly remember that for 2 years in a row, there was not a single 300 out of 365 or 366 days that I was either not welcoming somebody from Africa here, including Christmas, New Year, or I was back in Africa spending my birthday there and stuff.
Yeah, well,
so
60 companies in 8 markets, you've got your hands full.
Yeah, but then, it was really interesting because I had to go to Rio
Okay.
all the time to convince the Brazilian national shipping line, a state-owned shipping line that was created by the government, because the government, we needed someone or some shipping company to take our products overseas because there was none.
Yeah.
So I had to convince them to stop at an African port on the way to the Mediterranean,
Okay.
because they would go straight. There was no cargo to stop in Africa. No? So I was lucky to get a first vessel coming after 4 months.
Okay.
So I had to work during 4 months to get enough cargo to justify the very first stop of a vessel in Africa.
Okay.
And I did it. And then next 4 months for the next vessel.
Yep.
But then after 8 years, instead of having one vessel every 120 days, we had one vessel every 10 days.
Oh, wow.
I would take my motorcycle, because I always visited those 60 companies riding my passion is just two wheels motorcycle since 1971. So I would take my motorcycle, go to the Santos port. In those days, there was no this stuff about security as you have nowadays. And then I just park my bike under the warehouses next, meters away from the dock, and go inside the boat, inside the ship, and pray and ask and beg the cargo master to accommodate all the cargo that I needed. It was a very romantic moment. You know?
That's amazing.
Yeah, and that was really, really romantic. And then I was famous because where is the African motorcycle guy coming now?
Okay.
No, I was the African guy that would always visit those 60 companies riding his motorcycle. And but then I would ride about 60,000 kilometers a year, 5,000 kilometers a month. And I had to have more than 1, 2, or 3 bikes. And I noticed suffering. What was the suffering? No after-sales service.
Okay.
Why no after-sales service? Because when Brazil put a stop on imports, companies like Harley Davidson, BMW, companies that we are going to talk about when we get to the 90s.
I want to get to that now, Okay, so this is great.
Those companies, they said, well, there's not enough business. Let's concentrate in Europe or United States and Canada. We have a world of our own here. South America, Brazil, they would ask if, you had snakes at Avenida Paulista and stuff like that.
Yeah, monkeys.
Monkeys, and if Buenos Aires was the capital of Brazil, those things that we used to hear back
how's your
in
Spanish?
some 50
Absolutely.
years. Yeah.
Still say that.
But then it says they abandoned this market, and we started suffering for lack of spare parts and service for our motorcycles. And then I decided to set up a small workshop.
Okay. This is the Amazonas motorcycles?
Before.
No. Okay.
This workshop was restoring Harleys and BMWs and Guzis and foreign bikes, mainly these two brands.
So just to set the stage correctly, if I'm understanding, so you've been doing the foreign trade. You're riding your bike to do your business.
Yes.
You're seeing that parts are not available, maintenance isn't there. You set up a local shop to service yourself and other hobbyists.
Yes.
Okay.
And other customers.
Yeah.
But that was a hobby.
Yeah.
My main profession was foreign trade. But then that hobby, I says, well, there are so many more people than myself suffering out of lack of after-sales service. Lack of, these companies taking care of their reputation, taking care of their brand. Mm-hmm. And then this workshop, after 1 year, was loaded up with motorcycles from professional, from fleet owners. Like the Federal Highway Patrol, the State Highway Patrols, and the Army, Navy, and Air Force. And why? Because they were suffering. And we had to eliminate suffering.
Yeah.
And then I said, well, let's copy Let's be encouraged. Let's enjoy the beautiful inheritance of the Brazilian industrial heroes. And let's believe in ourselves, get all the experience that I have with decades of running bikes and fixing bikes. And let's start our own motorcycle industry. But I would never imagine that this would become a legend worldwide. Even the Tokyo police would use a Brazilian-made 100cc, the biggest bike in the world, for 20 years. Until Honda came up with an 1800cc Goldwing. But then for 20 years, Brazil produced the world's biggest motorcycle and was in the cover of Cycle World, Rider magazine, you name it.
It was a common bike for police, right?
Yes, it was engineered for professional use, for fleet.
Okay. Because
if it is strong enough to run 60,000 kilometers a year, it's far, it would definitely exceed the expectations of somebody that is going to drive or to ride for 6,000 kilometers a year.
So how did this, so you've got your warehouse full of bikes that need to be fixed. How did you go about, I guess you learned how motorcycles work, you were doing this work. What is the origin of the Amazonas motorcycle?
Well, first we had to have an engine and a gearbox that is something that you just do not produce with a little investment. But then I was riding BMWs. And there is a guy who invented that very simple boxer engine back in the early 1900s. And that little engine was used for airplanes, small airplanes. But then somebody saw that that engine is light, it is nice, and decided to have it used for a motorcycle. And then it became a sort of a motorcycle called BMW. And then this guy who made money with this airplane engine, made money with a motorcycle engine, he was asked to make a little car that could be very, very dependable and could even work, in the sand, in the desert, without need of a water cooler or whatever, a very light, dependable car. And he created this sort of Fusca, the VW Beetle.
The Beetle,
And then he made enough money with the Beetle and he started his own hobby, making sports cars. His name, Ferdinand Porsche. So the same VW engine is the same BMW engine, is the same little aircraft engine. Very simple based engine, very light. So I went to Volkswagen and I said, look,
Which had a big presence in Brazil at the time, right?
Yes, definitely. And then I said, well, I want to use a VW engine to make a motorcycle. He says, what? Yes, why not? Because it is the basic BMW motorcycle boxer engine, except that instead of having only 2 cylinders, it has 4. So then we created the first Brazilian motorcycle engine, motorcycle factory based on a VW engine.
Amazing.
And then we had what? Very dependable and readily available after-sales service at any corner. The Rider magazine, Cycle World magazine, is the biggest, most important in the world for 2 wheels. Once quoted, when it comes to after-sales service or spare parts, you can stop at any Kmart. In those days, it was not Walmart.
I've been to my share of Kmarts. I know Kmart well.
And then it also quoted, when it comes to a mechanic, not only spare parts, but labor, and then it says, any mechanic that can distinguish the tip from the handle of a screwdriver can get the Amazonas back on the road again.
That's amazing.
So I says, well, no suffering with parts anymore, no suffering with skilled mechanics that you cannot find, very dependable. So this bike brings us what we were just talking about, freedom instead of dependency.
Amazing. How big did Amazonas get? So was it just you? Did you have partners? How many markets were you in? Kind of how many motorcycles were on the road in Brazil?
So they were actually custom-made motorcycles in those days.
Okay.
We did not have a large-scale production. We made like 420 units.
Okay.
But they were really, I would say, a piece of art.
Okay.
Rather than a scale production, because we did not have the financial means to open up a large factory.
Okay.
And then my friends, those Brazilian heroes that I was always, in love and doing business with, they came to me and says, look, we created these large, beautiful industries that you represent in Africa, but we must give you our own experience and advice. Do not go to any Brazilian bank for a loan to encourage industrial production.
Okay.
He says, why? You guys have gone. But then they said, well, the interest rates, they are very inviting. But when it comes to monetary correction, if that is something that the developed world can understand, which is besides the interest, you have a way to cope up with the inflation, with the loss of purchasing power.
Yeah.
So we call it...
I think it's indexing, right? So you have an index to the inflation in addition to the interest.
Yes. So that was absolutely crazy. It came to a point that we had 80% inflation a month.
Yeah.
That we had to price our products 3 times a day.
Yeah.
That by, when you would close your business at 5 in the afternoon, banks were closed. You would keep the money that you would keep in the bank from 5 p.m. to 9 or 10 in the morning next day was called overnight.
Yeah.
The overnight interest that you would get on the money that you had in the bank was far more profitable than manufacturing anything.
Yeah.
Than the money that you could make by manufacturing anything. So speculation, financial speculation, was far more interesting than manufacturing anything. So companies in the end of the year, they would have in their balance sheets a non-operational
income. Yeah.
income. Non-operational income was so much higher than operational income.
How did you switch from, I guess, what happened to Amazonas, and how did you switch to beginning to do representation for some of the brands you've mentioned? So Royal Enfield, Harley Davidson, Arctic Cat. I think there's a number of other ones, right?
Yes, yes. So in the 80s, besides doing business in Africa, I decided to go back to the United States.
Okay.
And start supplying precision-made parts for original equipment manufacturers in the United States, like Perkins, Ford, MEWM, Club Car, Toro. So
Brazilian manufacturing to the U.S.
To the U.S.
Okay, great.
Not for aftermarket, but for production line.
Right.
And we had a fantastic quality ranking, and we were extremely competitive.
Okay.
Until we started losing competitiveness with the economical disaster that we started to live, where the dollar, we had the official dollar and the black market. The black market is the true dollar.
Yeah.
The official dollar is the dollar that you had to go through the central bank before you could bring foreign currency into Brazil. But the difference between official and the black market was only 130%.
Okay, only.
Only.
Yeah.
So would be the equivalent to say that the real dollar today would value 14 or 15 reais.
Yeah.
But then if you export, you have to bring those dollars
at 7.
At 7.
Yeah.
So we lost our international competitiveness.
Okay.
So what happened? In early 90s, 1991, I was flying back to our company in the States, where I had this structure to supply OEM parts on a just-in-time basis for OEMs. And then I read in a cover of a local magazine that the Brazilian government opened up the boundaries for imports and named 2,000 items that could be coming into this country.
Okay.
At the most fragile moment of our economy. So that was, the drop of water that would...
In English, the expression, I think, is the straw that broke the camel's back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I was devastated by that. Mm-hmm. And one of the items that was allowed to be imported into Brazil was motorcycles. So I followed the advice of my suppliers, my Brazilian industrial heroes, who told me, look, go, you already have a base in the United States. You go and look for an American partner that has access to financial resources, to loans, to money at a convenient cost, not 130%.
Yep.
And that has also some technological contribution to provide to your motorcycle business. And I said, what am I going to do now? Mm-hmm. This was Saturday. I said, well, we have to make a lemonade out of this lemon. And on Monday, I called Harley Davidson in Milwaukee. On Wednesday, I was there. And they looked at me on Wednesday and says, are you the one who replaced all our motorcycles for police use? Yeah. I says, I am the one who took the opportunity that you left open, not caring for your customers with after-sales service. And it was very nice because I also, amongst those 60 companies, I also represented Ford.
Okay.
And then any Ford industrial facility, at least in Brazil, at the reception, they had a huge poster of Henry Ford in the back.
Okay.
Saying that your second sale is after sales service.
Okay.
What does it mean? The way to conquer loyalty is when your customer needs you.
Yeah.
And he needs you when he has after-sales service requirements.
Yep.
So, you see a market, one of the biggest countries in the world, a large population. They don't look at the purchasing power. They don't look at the distances. They don't look at the logistics. They don't look at the finance. They don't look at people's consumer habits. And they says, okay, they start to make an analogy to Argentina that doesn't have nearly as much industries as we have, to Chile, to Colombia, to Mexico. Forget, Brazil is a totally different reality. This is why Mercosur is just a theory. It doesn't work.
Okay.
Because Brazilian system, especially taxes, they are an island. We are in an island where taxes and legal system is a totally...
It's just very different.
Very different.
Yeah.
And very claustrophobic, to say.
Okay.
So this is why we are one of the most difficult countries in the world to do business.
Yeah.
So I went to Harley and says, you know what? I can make our business grow and be very successful in Brazil. Mm-hmm. But number one, we have to restore the Harley Davidson brand image, because the image is totally deteriorated because of poor after-sales service or non-after-sales service.
Okay.
And this is why Amazonas had the chance to exist and replace Harleys and BMWs.
Yeah.
So I came back with the objective of starting a Harley-Davidson industry in Manaus because of all the tax incentives that we have, especially for the two-wheel sector. First visit of somebody from Harley-Davidson was exactly for that particular purpose.
Okay.
But then Harley started experiencing an explosion of demand in the United States because they launched a better bike, an engine and a bike that could, start to compete with the Kawasaki that, occupied the scenes of the movies with the Californian Highway Patrol, the ships stuff. They were not using Harleys anymore, so the American Pride and stuff, the Japanese motorcycle. That restoration of American pride was the most important leveraging factor to the success of Harley-Davidson. But with that demand, that additional demand, the growing demand of bikes in the States because of that emotional factor, made Harley delay their plans to do what they had committed with me, which was to set up the factory in Brazil. They delayed that plan for 8 years.
Oh, wow.
What happened? Once again, big mistakes from Harley-Davidson. Big mistakes from the Toro company, the world's biggest company in the landscape maintenance equipment. We had 95% market share on this landscape maintenance equipment business.
So you were bringing them both to Brazil at this point?
Harley-Davidson, 1991.
Yeah.
The Toro company, 1991. Club car, we started the electric car business in Brazil 1993.
Okay.
Until 2008, 15 years, nobody else was doing electric cars. Why? Because I had to start these businesses from zero. Nobody believed Harley-Davidson anymore. Nobody believed anything because of lack of absence of after-sales service in the previous decades.
Yeah.
So I had to create the electric car business. I had to create the Harley-Davidson business. I had to create the Toro business. And then came areas that Brazil had no experience at all, like laser instrumentation for traffic control systems.
Okay.
We started that in 1994. Meteorology, hydrology, environmental control systems, 1994 again with the Campo Scientific. In 1996, I was also, with this virus of mobility, I started the ATV business. There were no ATVs in Brazil. I started this from zero in 1996 with Arctic Cat.
Okay.
UTVs that are now in fashion, 1998. And then, more recently, 2010, I brought Royal Enfield to Brazil.
Okay. You see them around now? You see them around a decent amount?
Yes, they're selling a lot.
Yeah.
But all those companies, why is it that I am no longer representing them? Because I got tired of being, as a distributor, the least paid and the less recognized collaborator of all those companies.
Okay.
Because they started making analogies on what the Brazilian market should be based on their experience in other Latin American countries, and made so many incredible mistakes that you cannot imagine. There came a point that I said, well, as you know, I'm a writer as well, and says I'm going to recover all the millions that I've lost with Harley and Toro and Club Car by writing a book.
Okay.
The book, I would say, title is Success and Incompetence.
Okay.
Because those companies, they made so many mistakes. They lost so much money.
Yeah.
Because, why? Brazil is not for beginners. Brazil is not for those who can make analogies to any other market, unfortunately.
Yeah. Can you summarize some of the common mistakes that these companies that lost a lot of money made, and where, so Royal Enfield seems like maybe it's a good example because at least I see them around a decent amount. Like, what was it that the companies that did well that you worked with did well? What separated the successes from the ones that didn't do as well? You mentioned, obviously we've reinforced this idea of after-sale service and kind of customer first. What were the analogies they got wrong about Brazil? Where did they struggle?
Well, Harley, wise decision. Let's start CKD manufacturing in Manaus.
Okay.
Why? Because Harley had this wise decision back in the 70s. Brazilian government told them, okay, you want to sell bikes here? Police, we have a big market, okay? You have to assemble them here. So, okay, no problem. Brazil,
Free trade zones.
they started to assemble bikes in Manaus. But then they closed that factory 2 years after, 2 years later. They were having their own internal problems in the States and ta-ta-ta. But instead of continuing and investing in the market, they closed down. So the Toro company, no landscape maintenance equipment here at all. We had agricultural tractors and push behind electric mowers. And then this crazy guy, decides to present to the soccer company, to the soccer country in the world, an equipment to maintain soccer fields.
Okay.
That will cost $55,000 because, and there was a really conflict because the best soccer clubs in Brazil were using not $45,000 piece of equipment, but $500 piece of equipment pushed behind electric mowers.
Yeah.
So it was a lot of effort, a lot of time, a lot of convincing, a lot of demonstrations, and we ended up having 95% or more of all the Brazilian market for landscape maintenance equipment.
Huh?
And then somebody smart comes from the United States and, regional managers and terror films are same because if a new regional manager comes, he tends to say, no, I'm going to make history. Everything that has been done in the past must be done different so I can get the credit. Mm-hmm. And then they come up with these crazy inventions and ideas.
You talked about ego, right? Yeah.
And then they decided to say, okay, Brazil is a big country. Blah, blah. We are going to have not one distributor that you already spent all your 10 years worth of investment, etc. Now we are going to spread the market to several dealers because it's a big country. It's a big country that only had 96 golf courses in the entire territory.
Yeah.
And that is only 3% of the quantity of golf courses that you have in Florida.
Yeah.
So the typical American mentality looks at the country by the size, the territorial size, but the size of the population. But then they forget that we play soccer. We don't play golf. We have a big population, but we have only 1/8 of the purchasing power of a normal American. But then we have 92% tax, which means that everything that comes to this country costs 3.2 times more than it costs to an American consumer.
Yeah.
So 8 times 3.2 means to say that the size of the Brazilian market for Toro, is 8 times 3.2 is 25 times less than what they can sell in the States.
Yeah.
And you have to be very careful how you do your business. Toro has practically disappeared from the market.
Yeah. After 95% share.
After 95% share. Well, after the disastrous experience of paying the highest indemnization fee to recover the brand back, Harley Davidson was forced to do things right.
Okay.
Because of suffering. So, human beings are unfortunately far more motivated to change their habits based on suffering than based on pleasure.
Well, you remember the bad things better than the good things.
So as a result of suffering, 15, 16 years later, they decided to take the little Bible that we made day one in 1991 and says, that crazy guy that made that Brazilian motorcycle was right, so let's go back to the formula. And then they became successful.
For the regional managers that don't want to be terror films that are listening, what are the things that they need to know about kind of coming into Brazil and doing business in Brazil?
First, do not try to understand the Brazilian financial system. Do not try to understand our tax structure. It is not Harvard is going to give you a light to that. It is by coming here and getting into the roller coaster and experiencing what the Brazilian roller coaster tax system is all about.
Yeah.
So unless you cannot go by theory. You know, there are two basic professionals or expertise that you cannot hire a foreigner to run a foreign business in Brazil. One is finance and marketing.
Interesting. So the ones that have come, I agree with marketing also actually, but the two things that have come up a couple times in the conversations I've had here are pay extra for good lawyers because you'll pay more later if you don't, and pay extra for good accountants because if you don't, you'll pay more later. But I agree on the marketing point as well. Marketing in Brazil is unique. But please tell me why you think those two.
Because we are living in a totally uncomparable environment. We cannot associate, you cannot make analogy to any other country.
Okay.
It's so unique.
Yeah.
And have an external audit company instead of you trying to understand what those people are doing. Because if you try to understand what those people are doing, you have to become more expert than they are. Yeah. And that is going to take you through, the sensation of the Brazilian business roller coaster.
Yeah. Before we wrap up, any kind of additional lessons? What excites you about Brazil? And what would you tell to people that are coming, trying to do business in Brazil and trying to build in Brazil?
Well, you see, Brazil is no longer an interesting business partner. It is a strategic partner.
Okay.
So it changes entirely the perspective. A business partner, when you look at the business partner, you're looking at results, financial results. When you look at strategic partner, you are looking at a historical existence. It's totally different. Today, despite of our problems, despite of our politics, our legal system, our laws, our economy, our very extremely high interest rates, companies worldwide, they know that unless they dive into the Brazilian market, they are going to be suffering a lot by losing a strategic partner in the medium and long run.
Okay.
So more than ever, Brazil has to be seen today as a medium and long run strategic partner. If the picture that you can see from this historical moment that we are living politically or economically is not the most favorable, Brazil is still essential in the medium and long term planning of any international company.
Yeah. Guilherme, this has been fantastic. I really have enjoyed this conversation. But before we wrap up, and I know there were lots of other things that we wanted to talk about, and you've mentioned it a few times here, the idea that Brazil is not for beginners. What does that expression mean to you?
Brazil today has 210 approximately million population.
Yep.
1/3 of the Brazilian population that is in the age of working, to be economically active, is inactive or subactive.
Okay.
We have 40 million Brazilians that are illiterate. This represents a gigantic market for those who have a social inclusion vision. If we can be humble enough to learn from the experience of today's Asian tigers that 40 years ago were starving to death, and became worldwide historical references of social inclusion and economical inclusion. And look at this population of 40 million people that are capable of entering the Brazilian economy. We will see that Brazil has a wonderful opportunity for foreign companies that have the ESG mentality, ESG requirement. And what we are doing today, based on social inclusion, based on two basic activities without which no one that lives in a city can survive. And we don't realize that because we were born in a big city.
Yeah.
But we cannot survive without supply and recovery. If we cannot get our daily supplies of foodstuffs, cleaning materials, we die of hunger. If we cannot get our waste removed, we die of disease. And all those activities, they depend on high intensive labor and very economical means of transportation.
Okay.
This is why today, this is why 23 years ago, we founded the Life Recycling Association that is considered the Brazilian top reference in social inclusion and recycling, because we made out of this activity a very profitable enterprise, as against an activity that has to be sponsored by subsidies all the time. Because when you go to any international organization or Brazilian organization and you talk of, you have to invest in the social, you have to invest in the environment, everybody twists his nose to say,
it's a cost,
it's a loss. It's something, a money that I have to swallow, and I have to cope with it. Otherwise, I don't get ESG credits. I don't get this. I don't get that. But once we engineer a system that can make of practicing love through social inclusion, practicing love through providing these two very essential activities, a supply of daily consumption items and the retrieve of your waste, through a system that embraces this very humble and suffering large portion of our population. We can expect Brazil to follow the same successful example of those countries that in Asia 40 years ago were starving, and today they are very important world powers. So Brazil has that opportunity, provides that opportunity, and it has to be based on love and construction and honesty and solidarity and loyalty. It is far more today in the hands of the private initiative than in the hands of governments. So the big thing, people ask me, why you at 70 years old, with a company that you started when you were 12 years old, you work around the clock and with so much optimism, with so much happiness. It is because today the world has waken up, and Brazil likewise is waking up for the fact that we have the power to make our lives better. We don't have to be depending on any government, regardless of how good or how bad it is. Because power is more than ever in the hands of private initiative. It doesn't matter the size. If it is a bakery or if it is the large company that makes the yeast. So we have the chance to write our own history. And that's what I would like to have another chance with you to talk about social inclusion, ESG, and how we can make this world better.
No, I'm glad you were able to mention Recicla Vida, right? So is
Yes.
the organization, and I'm glad you found a way to mention it and share a little bit. I didn't want to give it short shrift and not allow you to talk about it in detail, but we'll certainly connect to make sure that we can have that story told, because it's an amazing one.
I think it also helps tell the story of kind of what your work is about, and also this idea of, Brazil is not for beginners. But the other question I always like to end my conversations with is there a Brazilian habit or expression that you really like that foreigners don't understand? So you've been traveling your whole life, doing business abroad. What was something, is it an expression or something that you saw that, your foreign trade partners didn't understand, didn't get, or something maybe that really resonated with them? So is there an expression you can share with us from your lifetime of work abroad that is particularly Brazilian?
An expression that is very typical here, and most particularly to the people that have lived in my times, is the word joia.
Okay.
Joia means fantastic, nice, anything positive, anything beautiful. No, that's joia. I said, what is this guy trying? Joia is a jewel, but what does a jewel has to do with positive? No, it's
Brilliant.
Brilliant.
Yeah, it's brilliant. Sparkles. Guilherme, this was really great. I really appreciate the opportunity to sit with you and hear about your career and learn from all your wisdom. How can, you mentioned you're a writer, you're present on social media. How can people follow you? How can people learn about what you're doing with the electrical vehicles, but also with Recicla Vida, which you were able to mention there here?
Yeah, if you just type my complete name on YouTube,
Okay.
you'll have, for example, what was considered the most emotional or sentimental podcast during the pandemics that I did with Forbes magazine.
Okay, great.
It also tells a lot of what we spoke about in relation to the development of the Brazilian industry and the importance of personal mobility
Okay.
to the mobility of a human being in the social and economical pyramid.
Okay.
Mobility is absolutely essential.
Excellent.
And we have our books that I published in 3 languages. We also have the short videos, and it's Soul Book for Soul Book BR, and you can freely access our content that is very motivational, spiritual, and loving.
Yes.
Intended, and as I said, all the revenue goes to those who are really dedicated to make other people's lives better.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Really appreciate it. Thank you so much for listening. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did.